Once, in a quiet African village surrounded by whispering forests and a river that sang under the moonlight, there lived a young woman named Dada. Dada was kind but poor, with no family to call her own. Her hut was small and patched with mud, and she often sat by the river, dreaming of a better life, a life where she could have a child of her own. But in the village, Dada was also an outcast. Many said she was cursed, a woman destined to live alone forever. Though she longed for love, no man ever approached her. Her only companion was the moonlight that streamed through her broken roof at night. In the same village lived Abeni, the proudest and wealthiest man in the community, a skilled hunter. He was admired by all and had women competing for his attention. But Abeni's pride left no room for kindness to those beneath him. And to him, Dada was invisible. One evening, during the annual harvest festival, Dada saw Abeni laughing with his friends. He looked so powerful, so full of life. A desperate thought crept into her mind. If no man will give me a child willingly, I will take what I need. The festival lasted until the early hours of the morning. Abeni drank more palm wine than he should have, and by the time he staggered home, he barely noticed Dada lurking in the shadows. She waited until the village was quiet, slipping into his compound as silently as a cat. Dada used a trick she had learned from the older women in the village. She collected Abeni's seed by playing with his manhood, without his knowledge, preserving it carefully inside a small piping bag. She worked under the light of the moon, inserting it and squeezing the seed inside her, her hands trembling but determined. Days turned into weeks, and soon, Dada felt the first signs of life stirring within her. She was pregnant. When the villagers noticed her growing belly, they were relentless in their scorn. "Who is the father?" they demanded, jeering. "No man would ever look at you." But Dada refused to answer, shielding her secret like a precious jewel. Her silence only fueled their gossip. Women kept their distance, and even children laughed at her as she passed. "A cursed woman with a cursed child," they whispered. Still, Dada carried her child with pride, even as loneliness enveloped her. She dreamed of the day she would hold her baby in her arms. Months' time her labor began. She was in labor. The village was plunged into chaos. The skies, which had been clear all day, suddenly darkened. Thick, heavy clouds rolled in from nowhere, covering the village like a shroud. Thunder roared, shaking the earth, and lightning forked across the sky in jagged streaks. The villagers, terrified, gathered outside Dada's hut. Unsure of what was happening, rain poured down in torrents, soaking the ground and flooding the narrow paths. Inside the hut, Dada screamed in pain, clutching her belly as the child fought its way into the world. But something was different. The midwives, who had reluctantly come to assist her, trembled with fear. "The gods are angry," one of them whispered, backing away from Dada's bed. "No child should be born like this." As the rain lashed against the walls, Dada felt a sudden surge of strength. With one final scream, her child was born. A girl with skin as luminous as the moon and eyes that seemed to hold the secrets of the universe. The moment the baby's cry filled the air, the storm stopped, the thunder ceased, and the rain turned into a soft drizzle before disappearing entirely. A rainbow stretched across the sky, brighter and more vivid than any other villagers had ever seen. The midwives stared at the baby, their mouths agape. "She's not ordinary," one of them murmured. "This child, she's touched by the gods." But outside, the villagers were less forgiving. When word spread that the storm had stopped with the child's birth, they called her an abomination. "She is a curse," they shouted. "Born of no father, born under a storm that shook the heavens." They nicknamed her enchanting, the thing we cannot explain. The beauty and the burden. Despite the ridicule, Dada loved her daughter fiercely. She named her Abeni, meaning, "We asked for her, and she came." As Abeni grew, her beauty stunned everyone who saw her. Her skin glowed like polished bronze, and her eyes sparkled like stars. But the villagers only saw her as a reminder of the storm. "Abeni the abomination," they muttered. She should not exist. Even the children refused to play with her, and Dada struggled to make ends meet. Yet Abeni's heart remained kind. She helped her mother tend the fields, fetched water for the elderly, and smiled even when the world seemed cruel. When Abeni turned 7, something miraculous happened. The village was in the grip of a terrible drought. The riverbeds were dry, the crops withered, and the villagers were desperate. One afternoon, as the elders debated what to do, Abeni approached them. "Dig beneath the old baobab tree," she said softly. The elders scoffed. "What does a child know?" They sneered. But Dada, who believed in her daughter's gift, begged them to listen. Reluctantly, they agreed. More to silence her than out of belief. When they dug beneath the ancient tree, water burst forth, clean and pure, saving the village from famine. The people were stunned, but instead of thanking Abeni, they grew fearful. "She is not ordinary," they said. "She is dangerous. A child born from a storm is not meant to walk among us." Years later, during another village crisis, a deadly sickness swept through the community, sparing no one. Even Abiona, now an elder, fell ill. One night, Abeni had a vision. She dreamed of a rare herb that grew deep in the forest, which they used to make medicine. Guided by the dream, she led the villagers to the plant. Slowly, the sickness faded, and the people recovered. Yet they called her evil. One fateful day, when Abeni was 17, the truth of her birth came to light. She had already had a vision about how she was conceived, but knew it was her fate. Later that day, the villagers had a meeting about this strange girl. Abiona, now an elder, stood to speak. His once proud figure had softened with age, but his voice still carried authority. "There is something strange about this child," he said, his eyes narrowing at Abeni. "No father, yet she performs miracles. How do we know she is not a spirit sent to harm us?" Before Dada could defend her daughter, Abeni stepped forward. Her young voice rang out with a strength beyond her years. "I am no spirit, Elder Abiona," she said. "But it is time you all knew the truth." "Truth?" They all murmured in suspense. She turned to her mother. "Tell them, Mama. Tell them what you did." With tears streaming down her face, Dada revealed everything. The stolen seed, the lonely nights, her desperation to have a child. Gasps filled the air, and Abiona's face turned pale. "You dared to take from me without my consent?" he roared. "Yes," Dada replied, her voice trembling but defiant. "And if I had not, this village would have perished many times over. Abeni is your daughter Abiona, but she belongs to the gods. You mocked me, abandoned me, but I took what I needed to bring her into this world, and it is she who has saved you and the entire village." Abiona was speechless, staring at the child he had ignored all these years. The villagers too were humbled. They realized that the storm that marked Abeni's birth had not been a curse but a sign. She was no abomination. She was a blessing, a seer, chosen by the gods to guide and protect them. From that day on, Abeni was no longer mocked. The villagers sought her counsel in times of trouble, and her visions saved many lives. As she grew, she became the heart of the village, a bridge between the people and the gods. And Dada, once an outcast, walked with her head held high, proud of the daughter she had brought into the world. Abeni's name became legend, her story told for generations. A tale of courage, destiny, and the storm that brought salvation.